Hi, this is Clint, and this is 15 Minutes for God. I want to apologize up front. I'm a little short of breath today, so I might have to stop and take some water or whatever. But I'll just do what I can do and try to get this one out. I wanted to continue with another lesson. We're going to start in Genesis 13, which is where we left off before. This is number 32 session. I'm going to call it Abram and Lot split up, and then there's a big fight. And I'm still down here at my son's house, waiting on some potential medical things that out in the backyard, and over there you can see behind me there somewhere. I can't make my finger point right, but over there on my right side there's a bird feeder, and there's a lot of doves and things that fly around here, and it's pretty cool that the wind's picking up. So I'm going to try to get this. I don't know if rain's going to try to sneak in or what. But anyway, what I'm going to do is just read through the first chapter and then talk about it, because like we did in number 30, this one has a lot of hidden messages in the back. And it's ways you can read the story and look at it, but then you can see other stuff if you dig a little deeper. And so that's what I want to do with this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump into it right now. It's number 13, and in my Bible it says Abraham and Lot separate. And it says this is after they had come across. God told Abram, that's not Abraham yet, he's still Abram. That was his name, and God's going to change it to Abraham. But when he headed over from Terran, where his father was living, that was his father. And they came on over into Canaan, and they went down into Egypt, and they ran into trouble when he kind of lost a little faith, tried to pretend his wife was his sister so they wouldn't kill him. So anyway, he got kicked out. He's heading back north, and so that's where they're going now. So it says, so they left Egypt and traveled north into the Negev, Abram with his wife and Lot and all that they owned. For Abram was very rich in livestock, silver, and gold. Then they continued traveling by stages towards Bethel, to the place between Bethel and Ai, where they had camped before. And that's spelled A-I. I'm assuming that's Alley. I don't know. And that's one thing we're going to see in here is a bunch of wild names that if I mispronounce them, I'm apologizing up front. This was the place where Abram had built the altar, and there he again worshipped the Lord. Now Lot, who was traveling with Abram, was also very wealthy with sheep, cattle, and many tents. But the land could not support both Abram and Lot with all their flocks and herds living so close together. There were too many animals for the available pasture land, so an argument broke out between the herdsmen of Abram and Lot. At the time, Canaanites and Perizzites were also living in the land. So this is a pretty crowded place. Then Abram talked it over with Lot. This arguing between our herdsmen's got to stop, he said. After all, we're close relatives. I'll tell you what we'll do. You take the choice of any section of the land you want, and we will separate. If you want that area over there, then I'll stay here. If you want to stay in this area, then I'll move on to another place. Lot took a long look at the fertile plains of the Jordan Valley in the direction of Zor. And this is to the east of where Jerusalem and the Jordan River were. The whole area was well watered, everywhere like the garden of the Lord, that's the Garden of Eden, or the beautiful land of Egypt. This was before the Lord had destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot chose that land for himself. I'll back up a second. Sodom and Gomorrah were two towns right near there, supposedly. Lot chose that land for himself, the Jordan Valley to the east of him. He went there with his flocks and servants and parted company with his uncle Abram. So while Abram stayed in the land of Canaan, Lot moved his tents to a place near Sodom, among the cities of the plain. Now it says he's living near Sodom. The people of this area were unusually wicked and sinned greatly against the Lord, and we'll find out more about that later. But then it says, after Lot was gone, the Lord said to Abram, look as far as you can see in every direction. I'm going to give all this land to you and your offspring as a permanent possession. And I am going to give you so many descendants that like dust they cannot be counted. Take a walk in every direction and explore the new possessions I'm giving you. Then Abram moves his camp to the oak grove owned by Mamre, which is at Hebron. There he built an altar to the Lord. And that's the end of chapter 13. And we're going to stop here for a second and kind of dissect it a little bit more. Because number one, when you're up here in the front section, it says Abram was loaded with livestock and gold and silver. Well, I think God blessed them because first thing he did when he was there first time was praying. Well, even before that, when God told him to get up and go, he got up and went. So he went and was doing what God wanted him to do. And God says in different sections of the Bible that if you follow my commands, you will be blessed, and I'll always be protecting you. Like the 23rd Psalm says, Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And so he blessed him, and he also blessed Lot that was with him. Well, then that second section they get into, they're fussing over cattle and grazing rights and what have you. I think this was probably the herdsmen more than Abram and Lot, but since they were the big bosses, eventually it gets caught up to them and they have to make a decision. And so the other thing was that the Canaanites and the Perizzites, this was the land of Canaan. And if you remember back when we were talking about Noah, Ham, who was one of Noah's sons, saw his father naked and got cursed by his father. Well, Canaan was Ham's son, which was Noah's grandson. And Noah basically cursed all of those folks. And that's what these people are, everything that ends up in Nites, Perizzites, Amorites, Hittites. We'll see a whole bunch of Hites here in a little bit. All those guys were the ones that are supposedly covering that land, but they're going to get cursed and kicked out. And that's where the Jewish people are going to come in and get to take that land. And so they were living in there too. Well, so what are you going to do? You got a big mess. Well, Abram, being the Christian guy that he was, said, hey, go pick what you want. God's already told him there was plenty of land for him. He said, you go take the one you like. I'll go over here. We'll split out a little bit. We've got room. So he does the right thing. He doesn't create turmoil. He doesn't create strife. He doesn't fight. He says, here, go get what you want, and I'll get what's left. Because he knows God's going to take care of it. And as soon as Lot makes his decision, he heads out over to the east. Now, I don't know if it was just because the thing looked watered well and good for the herds, or if he knew anything about Sodom, what a yucky city it was, and filled with wicked people. And we'll get into that later in the next session some, when we find more about how horrible they are. But he ended up over there with them. And he's living outside, it says right now, outside of Sodom. And then it ends up that section with, after Lot being gone, God comes back again to Abram and says, here, look here, fella. Look at all this. This is going to be your land. This is going to be, and it's not so much for him to be rich and famous, but he says, this is where your descendants are going to be able to live. I'm giving you this because you found faith with me. And Abram doesn't even have any kids yet. He's already 80-something years old. So it's a pretty wild thing to think of, but he just keeps on going and trusting God. So then we go into chapter 14, and this is where they start into the big fight. And this is where all these names are that I may butcher, but just kind of bear with me. And it says, and about this time broke out in the region King Arampha of Babylonia, King Ariarch of Elazar, King Kedorlama of Elam, and King Tidal of Goam fought against King Bera of Sodom, King Bersha of Gomorrah, King Shinib of Admah, King Shemeber of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, which is now called Zor. The kings of Sodom, Gomorrah, Adam, Zeboah, and Bela formed an alliance and mobilized their armies in the Shittim Valley. That is the Valley of the Dead Sea, right there where Lot's hanging out. For 12 years they had all been subjects to King Ladorama, but now in the 13th year they rebelled. I want to stop here for a second and think about it. It says for 12 years they had been subject to this king Caledorum. Well, there's 4 kings on one side, 5 kings on another side, and they're just little cities. They're not even big countries as far as I know. They're just separate like city-states. But each one of them's got a king who's wanting to kick butt and take names. And like, I think God talks to me in funny ways, but like today, I was going to post this and messed it up yesterday. But today I was watching a movie that my sons was watching, and it was about knights or whatever. And the guy said it was where one of the knights were all noblemen, except for this one guy that was sneaking in there, and that he wasn't a nobleman, but he kind of pretended to be one so he could be in the tournament. This was the Knight's Tale story. I think the old Heath Ledger movie. But in it, he said, one of his guys looked at him and said, well, where do you think all these knights, what have they been doing? Where do they get their power? Who makes them king? And we're the peons. And the guy looked at him and he said, yeah, it's with the sword. You know, they just go and take what they want, and they get what they want, and they do whatever they want with it. And later on in the movie, it mentioned something about, well, if you're a true knight, the bad guy said, you don't give any mercy. Because during the movie, the Heath character let one of the other characters get by without killing him or making him look bad. He gave him mercy. And the bad guy's saying that to one of the girls, the queen or something. He said, a real knight doesn't give mercy. Well, that's the whole deal with these guys here. That's true. These guys took these lands. They didn't make themselves. Let's back up. They weren't kings to begin with. The guy with the biggest sword became the king, and then they tried to rule with their families becoming what was called royal, so that their descendants were the ones that would take over. And we'll see when we get into other sections of like Chronicles and Kings in the Bible here, that they were going back and forth, and sometimes their descendants would make it, and sometimes they'd kill their father, or sometimes their cousin would come in and kill them and try to take over, and they showed no mercy, which is exactly opposite of what God wants to be as a king and what he shows us as a king to do. And there were a few kings that kind of got it, but most of them went the other way around. And that same thought has progressed all the way down through the ages. Now, even now, they still do it. They don't necessarily have kings that are out there killing everybody, but we don't know what all is going on in the background, like all this stuff with Mueller and Trump and stuff that's going on. It's just, there's so much in the background that we don't know, that these guys are manipulating to take power and take control and make cash and topple countries, and then you still have some of the underdeveloped countries that are just going out there and killing and raping and doing whatever they need to do just because that's what they still do. They still take it with a sword. So we haven't improved our lot in life in thousands of years. We're still doing the same thing. Like here it says, well, these little guys here, even though they didn't have much, they were still doing the same thing. And this was after 12 years of servitude, these guys decided they wanted to rebel. So it says 1 year later, King Kedorama and his allies arrived. They conquered the Rapalites and Asheroth Canaan, the Zuzites and Ham, these are some of them heights, the Emites in the plains of Kerdamah, and the Horites in Mount Seir, as far as El Paran, at the edge of the wilderness. Then they swung around to Emishpah, now called Kadesh, and destroyed the Amalekites, and also the Amorites living in Hazazon, Tamar. So there's a whole bunch of these Zites all over that are descendants of Canaan, and they're getting their butt kicked all the time. But now the armies of the kings of Sodom, Gomorrah, Adam, Zeboah, and Bela prepared for battle in the valley of the Dead Sea against King Kedorama of Elam and the kings of Gomea, Babylonia, and Elazar, 4 kings against 5. As it happened, the valley was filled with tar pits, and as the army of the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some slipped into the tar pits, while the rest escaped into the mountains. I don't think I'd want to slip into a tar pit. I saw some stuff on the Science Channel the other day where they found bodies that had fallen into tar bogs, and they just basically were petrified, and they hadn't changed from thousands of years. That would be a horrible way to go. The victorious invaders then plundered Sodom and Gomorrah and began their long journey home, taking all the wealth and food with them. When they're talking plundering, they're taking everything. If they don't want the town, they burn it to the ground. They take food, gold, silver, or all the money. They kill all the men usually. They would take the women if they wanted them. They might kill the children, or they keep them all for slaves. I mean, there ain't nothing left. They just tear it apart. If they wanted to keep the buildings, and they save them up, but all the rest of them were put into servitude, and they just destroy everything. So anyway, these guys have plundered this, and they're heading home. But then it says they also captured Lot, Abram's nephew, who lived in Sodom. So now it's saying Abram's nephew Lot, instead of just living outside of town, he moved into Sodom. And Sodom, again, was a bunch of bad dudes, so I don't know, but we'll see what happens with that going down the road. But for some reason, he went on in there. And it could have been he forgot what his relationship was supposed to be with God. So that's something we have to think about. So Abram's nephew, who lived in Sodom, and they took everything he owned. One of the men who escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew. Now this is the first time they call Abram a Hebrew. And some books say that may be just a version that's not spelled correctly, but that's what Abram's group, his tribe, is supposed to become, the Hebrews. He's the beginning of them. But at that point, he's called a Hebrew, who was camped at the oak grove belonging to Mari the Amorite. Mari and his relatives Eshcol and Aner were Abram's allies. So instead of going in there and kicking butt and taking names and doing whatever, Abram gets in there and makes friends with some of these guys there that can help him do what he may need to do. And share stuff. Don't just try to rip it out of everybody's hand. So it says then, when Abram learned that Lot had been captured, he called together the men born into his household, 318 of them all, and he chased after Chedorlaomer's army until he caught up with them in Dan. Now he only had 318 men plus his friends there that were with him. And that's not a whole lot. When you get later on down the road, you'll see battles where they said 50,000 and 100,000 troops were killed in one afternoon. These guys only got 300 men. But they're out there trying to protect against these 9 kings that are doing the same thing. So it don't matter whether it's 100,000 or 2. When you act the wrong way, it's in the spirit, it's in the heart. That's what's causing all the problem. It says he chased after the army until he caught up with them in Dan. There he divided his men and attacked during the night from several directions. Chedorlaomer's army fled, but Abram chased them to Hobah, north of Damascus. That's a long way up. Abram and his allies recovered everything, the goods that had been taken, Abram's nephew Lot with his possessions, and all the women and all the captives. So God helped him whip up on these guys, and they got back everything, including his nephew, which is primarily what he was looking for. Well, then it says, as Abram returned from his victory over Chedorlaomer and his allies, the king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Sheva, that is the king's valley. Then Melchizedek, the king of Salem, and a priest of the God Most High, brought him bread and wine. Now some Bibles say, when they're talking the king of Salem, that's also Jerusalem, that this was the king of Jerusalem, and he was also the priest at the time, and apparently he was a godly priest. Later on down, when Jesus is born, they make reference to Jesus being a priest in the order of Melchizedek. So that some scholars say that this Melchizedek was actually Jesus then at that time, but it just didn't mention that. That's just kind of a side issue, don't know. Anyway, he was a pretty big dude. Melchizedek blessed Abram with this blessing. Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has helped you conquer your enemies. So see, he's saying that God's, the true God, is who Abram is following, who Melchizedek is the priest of, has helped them defeat all these other guys who knows what they're worshiping, rocks, stones, boulders, who cares? I mean, they're all not gods, they're baloney. Well, then it says, then Abram gave Melchizedek a tenth of all the goods he'd recovered. That was the beginning of tithing. The king of Sodom told him, give back my people who you captured, but you may keep for yourself all the goods you've recovered. Abram replied, I have solemnly promised the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will not take so much as a single thread or sandal thong from you. Otherwise, you might say, I'm the one who made Abram rich. All I'll accept is what these young men of mine have already eaten, but give a share of the goods to my allies, Aner, Shechal, and Mari. So he shows then that he's not like the rest of the kings, that he's going to go in and rip up and take all the plunder and stick it in his back pocket, that his goal is to free the people that were being enslaved and return the stuff to where it was to the people that it belonged to, and trust in God, because God is going to help him achieve his goals, not ripping up and taking and doing all the stuff that goes along with that. And then, once that's occurred, the last section here in verse 15, I know we're running long, but I got to get to it. It says, afterwards the Lord spoke to Abram in a vision and said to him, do not be afraid, Abram, for I will protect you and your reward will be great. See, he's getting his reward now from God, not the plunder and the stuff from the guys ripping and stealing. But Abram replied, O sovereign Lord, what good are all your blessings when I don't even have a son? See, he's thinking, hey man, I'm 80-something years old and I don't even have a kid yet. Since I don't have a son, Eleazar of Damascus, a servant in my household, will inherit all my wealth. Because that's what happened. If you didn't have any sons, you picked somebody that was working for you and they got your stuff. You've given me no children, so one of my servants will have to be my heir. Then the Lord said to him, no, your servant will not be your heir, for you will have a son of your own to inherit everything I'm giving you. Then the Lord brought Abram outside beneath the night sky, and he told him, look up into the heavens and count the stars if you can. Your descendants will be like that, too many to count. See, before he was talking about sand on the shore, and you couldn't count the grains of sand. Now he's talking about the stars up in there. You can't count those either. And it says, and Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord declared him righteous because of his faith. Well, that's what he did when he left. He didn't know what was going to happen. When he told him to head out and go to Canaan, he just trusted in faith, and he went and did what God says. Well, that's what God's wanting us to do now when we're here in our time, is have faith in Jesus. That Jesus and God have got this in their back pocket, and as long as we believe in them and confess our sins and ask for forgiveness, that he's going to take care of us the same way. And that's what they did there. Well, then, not only does he do that, but then he comes on, and after he says he's believed in him and he's considered righteous because of his faith, then it says, then the Lord said, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur the Chaldeans to give you this land. So that's where they originally came from. But Abram replied, O sovereign Lord, how can I be sure that you will give it to me? Well, he's still kind of skeptical. Then the Lord told him, bring me 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. Abram took all these and killed them. He cut each one down the middle and laid the halves, let me get this book to working, it's wind's blowing, side by side. He did not, however, divide the birds in half. Some vultures came down to eat the carcasses, but Abram chased them away. Hey, just like that, you're doing an altar for the Lord, and in our world, there's always the vultures. And they're out there to steal and rape and do whatever. And that, to me, is symbolic of a lot of the people that are running around now. But Abraham protected them and chased them away, because that was for the Lord, not for them. That evening, as the sun was going down, Abram fell into a deep sleep. He saw a terrifying vision of darkness and horror. Then the Lord told Abram, you can be sure that your descendants will be strangers in the foreign land. Now he's telling them, your descendants will be strangers, and they will be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. Later on down here, we'll see where they get capture, or they end up with the Egyptians. Joseph and his group go over there to save them in the famine, and after Joseph dies, the Egyptians enslave them, and they're in captivity basically for 400 years. And then God leads them out with Moses. But he's telling him right now, that's what's going to happen. But I'll punish the nation that enslaves them, that's Egypt, and in the end they will come away with great wealth. They get a ton of people just paying them to get out of town. But you will die in peace at a ripe old age. After 4 generations, your descendants will return here to the land when the sin of the Amorites has run its course. That's all these ites that are doing their bad stuff. As the sun went down and it became dark, Abram saw a smoking firepot and a flaming torch pass between the halves of the carcass. I believe that was God taking the altar, just offering on the altar. So the Lord made a covenant with Abram that day and said, now see, besides just making him righteous with faith, he has made a covenant with himself. A covenant is like a handshake. Well, this is a covenant with God, and he never goes back on his covenant. So he made a covenant that day, saying, I have given this land to your descendants all the way from the border of Egypt to the great Euphrates River. That's all the way from Egypt, the Mediterranean, up the west coast there along the Mediterranean, and then when you're going farther east, you're going across the Euphrates, which covers Syria and Iran and all those different places now. And so all this land is supposed to have been for the Israelites. And it says, I've given you this land to your descendants all the way from the border of Egypt to the great Euphrates River, the land of the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaites, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgasites, and Jebusites. That's that whole bunch of sites I was talking about. So God has made this personal covenant with him because he was faithful, because he didn't do what all the rest of the guys were doing. And he just stuck with God. And that's what we have to do today. Because we'll see all the crazy things that are going on around here now. We don't know what all's happening with the government and stuff. It's like all the stuff with Mueller that keeps coming up and back in our faces. And just one day they're saying this, and one day they're saying that. And the stuff that's going on in Korea, and the stuff that's going on in the border, and down along Texas and those things. We don't know what's going on in the background. We got to trust God. We can't put all our trust in man, because there's a lot of hidden things going on there that we don't know. Boy, I'm out of breath, and I'm running out of time. But that's the end of it for this session. I appreciate you sticking with me. I hope you listen to the whole thing, because it means a lot to me to get this word out. And I'm just going to go right into prayer. Father, God, thank you for being our Holy Father and giving us a chance to belong to your family. Take care of my sons. Let them all learn about you and teach it to their kids. Take care of my oldest son and his family that are still having sicknesses that they need to work with. My cousin who has issues with her family, please help her and protect her. My 2 aunts that are still they're up in their late 80s or 90s, and they want to keep them safe. They're like my mom. I got more moms now than I know what to do with, but that's wonderful. The more that I can get, I need all the help I can. And just any unspoken prayers, people that are needing help, certainly take care of them and just lead us in the right direction. And we're hoping and praying that everybody comes around and sees you and knows that all they have to do is see you in faith. Like it says before, sometimes seeing's not believing, believing is seeing. We ask everything in Jesus' name. We give you all the glory. Amen. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Certainly send prayers, concerns, questions, comments. If I'm screwing this up, let me know. Of course, my verbiage is kind of lousy sometimes, but that's the way I am. I'm old and ornery, and it don't come out all the time exactly right, so I have to twist it and turn it to make it work. I'll keep working on that. But if you have comments or questions about the specifics, then certainly send them to me. Prayer requests, certainly do that. I'm not going to mention any names if you don't want to, as far as that goes, because God knows who those folks are. If you like us, give us a thumbs up. If you really like us, subscribe, because we need more people to pass this to different folks. Again, it's not about me. It's about spreading the message of God. And I thank you for watching. In Jesus' name, I love you all.